Greetings, students. So today we will be discussing about the cyclic changes that take place inside a female's uterus or a female's entire reproductive system. So this particular cyclic change that takes place, this is called as the menstrual cycle. Okay, so in this diagram out here, they have described how a menstrual cycle looks like and what are the changes that take place cyclically in the structure. Okay, so let's go over with it. Okay, so they have told us first of all about the hormones and the changes that take place in hormones in column number 1 and column number 3. And then they have also told us what happens through the endometrium of the uterus in column number 4. And in column number 2, they have told us about the changes that take place in the formation of your secondary oocyte or the ovum. Okay, so now this particular menstrual cycle is observed in all the primates. Like the primates means the monkey family, and also in human beings. And this particular menstrual cycle, specifically in case of human beings, is for 28 days. Now that might differ from person to person based on the hormonal changes and the genetic makeup that they have. So as per that, it might change. Some females might have a menstrual cycle for a period of 35 days, or some females might have it for a period of 25 days. So anywhere between 25 to 35 is considered normal, but ideally it should be of 28 days. Okay, so in this, what happens is there are a lot many changes that take place in case of your hormonal level, which are secreted by your gonadotropic hormones, that is your pituitary gland. Okay, so these gonadotropic hormones are secreted by the pituitary gland. Now you might have studied this in control and coordination, or you might know from last year that pituitary gland is a small organ which basically hangs from the hypothalamus, and it is present at the middle of your brain, at the center of your brain over there. Okay, so this pituitary gland is responsible for secreting lot many hormones, and the part of the pituitary gland which is ahead, which is called as anterior pituitary gland, secretes these hormones called as gonadotropic hormones. So there are two in number when it comes to females. So the very first is follicle stimulating hormone. So as the name itself suggests, it is going to stimulate the follicle. Now which follicle? The primordial follicle that was there. So as the level of follicle stimulating hormone is at an increased level over here, the follicles are stimulated to change into the next form. Okay, or to show growth or show division, and likewise. Okay, so that way the cells or the follicle will keep on developing, and as the follicles develop, the FSH level is going to go down. Okay, and then another hormone that we have is called as luteinizing hormone. Now why such a name is given to this particular hormone, I'll tell you shortly. Okay, so now what happens is as the follicle is prepared completely, that is a Graafian follicle, we know that on the 14th day of this particular cycle, that is exactly half of the cycle, on the 14th day, the ovum or the secondary or the follicle that you had, Graafian follicle, is going to burst out and the secondary oocyte is going to come out. Okay, so this particular process was called as ovulation, and when this happens, the residual part of the follicle should immediately get converted to corpus luteum. Okay, so since this particular hormone, that is luteinizing hormone, helps in conversion of the residual part of follicle into corpus luteum, that is why it is called as a luteinizing hormone. Okay, now what does this corpus luteum do is it secretes a hormone called as progesterone. Your corpus luteum is going to secrete progesterone, while as the theca interna of your secondary oocyte will be secreting the hormone estrogen. Okay, now estrogen is a hormone which leads to complete well-being of the female and of the female body. So when estrogen levels are high or when they are increasing, the females are generally in a very good mood, and they have very shiny skin, and their hair also looks beautiful, their face looks symmetrical, because of which they kind of look beautiful and glowing at that particular time. And also mentally also they are very much happy and they tend to not care about the negative things in their life as much. Okay, so they maintain a positive attitude at this particular phase. But as soon as the estrogen level goes down and the progesterone level increases, it leads to breakouts, that is pimples forming on their face, and also makes their skin very oily, and their hair becomes rough. Their mood is also quite like they become upset even by small things, or get irritated by small things. So they generally do not have a very good mindset at this period. So when the progesterone level is high and the estrogen level is low, the females generally feel a bit lazy and feel a bit down. Whereas when the estrogen levels are high, they are at better productivity, or they mentally are better to work out or carry out all the work that they need. So this is how the hormones have an effect on the body. Okay, so now, what kind of specific effect these two basically regulate is estrogen always maintains, whenever estrogen is in a higher level, it means that the female is not pregnant. Okay, and that the follicles can be stimulated, around 10 to 12 follicles get stimulated, and all of these 10 to 12 follicles, they generally move out in a particular line, like they are attached to each other by the theca. Okay, so this particular line is called as the Flugger line or the Flugger cells. It starts with a P, but the P is silent over there. So these Flugger cells are formed, but out of all those 10 to 12 follicles, only one will mature. Okay, now we had understood this, that when your mother was in the fetal stage inside your grandmother's womb, that time itself in her ovary 2 million follicles were formed, and when she was born, that time she had only 1 million follicle, and by the time she hit puberty, that time she only had 40,000 left. So out of these 40,000, in every 28-day period menstrual cycle, these are 10 to 12 of these follicles get start developing, but out of this, only one follicle will develop into a Graafian follicle. The remaining all of these primordial follicle are going to undergo destruction or atresia. Okay, so atresia ho jata hai, they get destroyed. So that way, if we consider that a female has had menarche means the beginning of the menstrual cycle at an age of 13, and also females come to a point in their life when they stop menstruating, that is, this menstrual cycle stops. So that is called as menopause. So menopause, generally female get it after an age of 45. So if we consider 45 as the age in which a particular female has undergone menopause, and she had undergone puberty at an age of 13, so they have a reproductive age of 32 years, and in one particular year you are going to have 13 of such menstrual cycles if they follow 28-day menstrual cycle. So that means 13 ovum will be, or 13 eggs will be given out. And if you multiply this 13 by 32 years of the reproductive ages, provided that they did not get pregnant at any point of time, then they will be giving out approximately 416 eggs in the reproductive age. So the number will be around 416. Such kind of questions do arise in NEET examination, wherein they give you options where they generally have numbers like 500, 600, 700, and 400. Okay, so in that case, you have to tick onto the 400. It will be nearby 400. Now, when a female gets pregnant, that time this menstrual cycle stops. The new follicles are not going to get developed. So for that particular 9 months of gestation period, there won't be any eggs given out. Okay, so in that phase of 32 years of reproductive ages, in that if the female got pregnant once or twice, then the number would go down by 460 of the eggs released by your body. Okay, so that way the number will be below 400 or 416, but it will never go above. It depends on the female as well, but generally females attain menopause by 55 years at the most. So if we also calculate until 55 years, it doesn't go above 500. So any number above 500 is not the amount of eggs that a female gives in her reproductive stages. She only gives less than 500 or around 400 in her reproductive stages. Okay, so I hope you all have understood this. Now, Okay, so we understood why the luteinizing hormone increased on the 14th day itself. That is because this particular residual cells had to be converted into the corpus luteum, okay, which would secrete the progesterone. Now, what significance does this corpus luteum have is it basically maintains the endometrium level of your female reproductive system. Now we know what endometrium is. Endometrium is the innermost lining of the uterus, and this particular lining is made by many of the cell debris that are there. Cell debris means tuta puta cell or waste material cell of the cells. So most of the cells that are destroyed or destructed within our body, they go and get settled in the uterus, and also some mucus will be there, and there'll be many uterine glands which will be secreting an uterine milk which is not white in color, it is reddish in color, and all so many things will be there. So mucus, uterine milk, cell debris, all these three things, what they do is they form a thick layer over there like this. Okay, so this is that thick layer. Okay, now why this thick layer is maintained? Because your uterus, this is a uterus, this is your the mesovarium, and here you have an ovum. Okay, once the ovum gives out the secondary oocyte on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle, it will stay there for 2 to 3 days, that is around 48 to 72 hours. So in this 48 to 72 hours, if the female has sexual intercourse or coitus, 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 so then that means the sperms can come over there and fertilize it. If it gets fertilized, then the zygote will move through the fallopian tube and fall into the uterus. Okay, but if it does not get fertilized, then the secondary oocyte comes through the fallopian tube and falls into the uterus. Okay, now if at all the zygote would come, the zygote should not get ruptured. So that is why what your uterus does is it increases the size of endometrium and makes a cushiony bed for the zygote to come and softly land on it and rest over there and develop into an individual. Okay, so that is why the endometrial layer will be very thick in the later stages, or this particular stage will be called as the secretory phase, because in this particular phase your corpus luteum is secreting progesterone hormone. Okay, so that is why we call it as a secretory phase. So in the secretory phase, the endometrium's thickness will go up to 3 to 5 millimeters, and it will be that thick. Okay, so as to give that cushiony effect for the zygote that is coming up. Okay, and now what happens is, if the egg did not get fertilized, the female did not have coitus, the egg did not get fertilized, and the secondary oocyte came in over there. Now we know that in the secondary oocyte you had corona radiata, many cells in an zigzag manner over there. So this corona radiata will bring about some destruction of the endometrium, and the endometrium starts shedding. Okay, now when the endometrial layer is going away, that time it will pass from the uterus into the vaginal tract and out of the vagina through the vestibule. We know the opening of vagina is said to be the vestibule. So through the vestibule it is going to come out. Okay, and once it comes out, it appears like a red blood-like substance, but it is not blood exactly. It does contain blood, but the blood that will be given will be only approximately 35 to 45 ml. Okay, this year's textbook says it can be anywhere between 45 to 100 ml. Okay, so 100 ml of blood is not too much of blood for our body. Our body already have 5 liters of blood, and if we keep on drinking water, it is going to produce more blood volume. So if 100 ml of blood goes away, it doesn't matter much, and all of it does not go away at the same time. It goes a little bit every day, and so that way this particular shedding of endometrium can take place for 5 days. And this is the thing that we can actually see, because the remaining all other things, the development of the follicle, the hormonal imbalance, all of it is happening at the cellular level, and we cannot see those things happening inside our body at a cellular level. The only thing which is observed to us is the shedding of the endometrium, which comes out of the vagina. Okay, so that is why what we do is, the first day when the shedding takes place, we consider that as the day 1. and from there we have marked down all of these days as per that. So as per that, from day 1 to day 5 you are going to have your menses. Menses means the shedding of the endometrium. This is also called as a menstrual phase. Okay, so that is when the females start using sanitary products like the sanitary napkins and tampons and things like that. Okay, so as to make sure that the blood stays out. Now one interesting fact is, whenever we get a cut anywhere in our body and the blood starts oozing out, after a period of 2 minutes it will start clotting. Okay, we know this very well. There are many clotting factors, platelets, which are going to bring about the clotting of the blood. Okay, but the blood which comes out of the vagina during the menses, it does not clot, because in the mixture of that particular menses that is coming out, there is an enzyme called as hydrolysine, which is not going to allow the blood to clot. Okay, and along with the blood you are also going to have cell debris which are going to come out, uterine milk which is going to come out, and also the unfertilized ovum. Okay, since unfertilized ovum is coming out through it, and also some amount of blood is coming out through it, that is why that entire mixture appears red in color. But that is not completely blood. It is it has blood, but then it is not completely blood. There are other components to it as well. Okay, you will also have mucus in that particular thing coming out. So that is why we call it as the menstrual flow and not the blood flow. Okay, so that is a menstrual flow which takes place. And this particular phase is also said to be the funeral of the fertilizing ovum, or it is also said that the uterus is crying for the death of the uh, death of the unfertilized ovum. Okay, funeral of the unfertilized ovum, sorry, not the fertilized ovum, unfertilized ovum, and the death of the unfertilized ovum. So that weeping, the uterus is basically crying out or weeping out. So such analogies have been given for this particular phase in many of the biological books by many writers. So that is how they are denoted as well. Now 0 to 5 is an on average day. Some females can also have this menstrual flow for 3 days, but some of them might have it for 7 days in a lot. So it will again differ from person to person as per your genetic makeup that you have. Okay, then comes the proliferative phase, where the follicle is getting proliferated. Proliferation means multiplication. So the follicle cells are dividing and the follicle is becoming larger and larger. In this meantime, the estrogen level is also going up, because the theca is secreting estrogen. Here the theca was not present at all. That is why estrogen levels were very minimal. But now the theca is secreting estrogen. That is why the estrogen level has increased. Okay. Now this increase in estrogen level is going to start asking the endometrium to prepare itself. So it is going to start docking in all the cell debris and every uterine milk and mucus and everything, and the thickness of the your endometrium is going to increase. In this phase, the endometrium thickness, it reduces down from 5 millimeters to 1 millimeter. Okay, whereas over here it will slowly regain, and when it comes into the secretory phase, it will go back to at least 3 to 5 millimeters. Okay, so that is what happens. So this particular event that takes place from day 6 to day 13 is said to be the proliferative phase. And then on the 14th day you have the ovulation taking place, and after ovulation from day 15 to day 28 you are going to have the post ovulatory phase, or also called as the secretory phase, and it is also called as luteal phase, because here the corpus luteum is present. Now if your second oocyte does not get fertilized, then this corpus luteum is going to get converted to corpus albicans. Okay, and then the entire cycle again starts over. So this way the cycle keeps on coming up. So only the thing that we observe physically is the menses that happens in the initial days. The remaining things, all of them they take place at a cellular level, and we are not able to visualize them. So that was the basic introduction about the menstrual cycle. We will be discussing about it in greater detail about every phase in the next lecture. So we will be covering it up tomorrow. So until then, you all stay safe at home, study well, revise everything, because tests are coming up. And as soon as the lockdown lifts up, you're going to be, we are going to schedule a lot of tests, and accordingly, you should be prepared on your feet. So accordingly, study well, and keep right. Subscribe to the Right of Academy's official channel. Do like this particular video. and also give look at the remaining videos that we have, or the previous videos which we have not gone through. And this graph that we had of the menstrual cycle, I want you all to submit it as an assignment by drawing it one time in your note. Okay, so all the best everyone, and see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.